Welcome, everybody. This is Tuesday Morning Grind, episode number 32. Today we have the world famous hacker Pyro on the show. Pyro is a famous hacker, security researcher, security leader, has done countless articles and talks, and you've been famous for a long time in my book. I know there's folks on my team who know who you are and are excited about this, so this is awesome to speak to you. Thanks, Pyro, for being here. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's an honor to get to be on your show.
Awesome. So you have an amazing handle, Pyro, and you've built a great brand around yourself and also for the companies that you serve. I want to talk about that. Where did you get the name? How did you build this brand of ethical hacking and pen testing? Did you intend to do it? How did this all come to be?
Yeah, I have been a pyromaniac since I was a little tiny kid. Single digits. I used to get in trouble for playing with matches and fire, and I ended up all but burning down my neighbor's garage and did burn down my grandmother's alley and a bunch of other stuff. So my mom and dad always used to call me Pyro, and they realized at some point in the chain of things that if they told me no, that I couldn't do it, I wasn't allowed to go do it, that I was going to go behind their back and I was going to go do things that were far worse. So my father, being incredibly intelligent, realized that if he helped me embrace it and learn safe ways to be able to do it or to apply it and to understand the power and potential of fire. This man's a firefighter, law enforcement officer, public servant. He saw it from a standpoint of maybe then he could kind of shape me or push me in a specific direction. I had a lot of interest in pyrotechnics, so I started studying and doing pyrotechnics professionally at a very young age and have kind of kept with that throughout my life. It's actually my retirement plan.
Nice. Okay, so I can already sense this theme of you harnessing something that could be bad for the use of good in pyrotechnics and also in ethical hacking here. So I can see the theme emerging.
Yeah. At 12, I ended up blowing myself up with one of my experiments and had melted up my hand pretty bad. And my mother, when we'd got done with the hospital and we're home and, I've got a nurse coming and taking care of me, that kind of a thing. That's when the Pyro thing stuck. She just started calling me her little Pyro at that point. Hard lesson learned. But from that point forward, like I said, I really made it a point to try to create things that were beautiful, impressive in their power, yet something that was, inspirational and would, make it to where people would be excited versus in fear of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did that transition into your notoriety and love of, computers and technology? When did you start getting into that?
I had a couple of really good friends, people who were fairly inspirational in my life, and I was able to get access to some computers. My dad spent an incredible amount of money to try to support me in this by buying a 486 SX from Radio Shack. Back in the day, it was an AST. Before that, I had got to play with, Commodore 64s, and the school district had like Apple IIes right around that same time. And I always found it amazing that you could, put a couple of lines of code into something and then have it create a video game or a smiley face on the screen and I was just kind of inspired and blown away by how powerful a computer was. When looking at it from like kind of the stages that had gone like 8080s and 8086s, right, where it's all but just dip switches to flip a 1 or a 0 to what we have now, it's mind blowing to think about that growth. And I think when I was young, I caught on to that very early, that it was something special, something different and unique. And I always had an interest in how it worked. So I was always tinkering with it and figuring out ways to break it. I got in trouble when I was younger for electronic trespassing, both with smaller stuff like with my local school district and larger stuff with some national level type companies. But all of that ended up leading to situations where, funny enough, through somewhat negative press or negative attention through that, it created an avenue where I was able to turn that into a career and build a business around it. I founded a team with a bunch of my friends who had been part of one of my hacking groups. The group was called Hackers Against Corporate Culture back in the day. I often joke that, if I looked at myself now and went back there or the other way around, one of us would be in trouble. But we got some negative attention. We were running this out of our local school or out of our local university, and one of the guys in our team ended up hacking a university out of California. Drew some attention. We ended up speaking to law enforcement and realized very quickly that we were in a bad situation. We were advised by one of our members' fathers, who was a lawyer, and he told us the best and quickest thing we could do to get out of trouble in this situation would be to incorporate as a company, and to leave the whole hacking culture thing and all of that behind. And that shouldn't be something that was going to be present in the upcoming discussions and conversations that we had. But we took it to heart, and myself and the others created Root Cellar Security Team, and I believe that was 1996, 1997. And we had a love for security, a love for a lot of these different things. Sneakers had been one of my favorite movies, war games, all that stuff had been very inspirational. But we created one of the first commercially available non-military red teams. And we were doing a lot of work for the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We were out in the middle of nowhere, Wyoming, working for out on the reservation, working for the Bureau of Indian Affairs in these local school districts and helping bring school into these classrooms. We would take contracts to then go do work around, helping these emerging businesses, right? The internet's just starting to explode, right? Late 90s. You've got all these businesses that are jumping online and they're hanging insecure software out there. So we're doing things like hacking old Microsoft Internet Information servers and doing various things like that. And it was a Wild West back then, right? One of my best relationships I still have to this day is a gentleman named Win Farnsworth, and he had an amazing company out of Casper, Wyoming. Man has done very well with his businesses over the years. I have a lot of respect for him. But I hacked their website and put like a little smiley face in the comments of their homepage, and then called him up and was like, "Hey, I hacked your webpage," and and he's like, "Hey, I could call the cops and you could go to jail." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's not what we're doing here. I'm trying to disclose to you that you have a problem inside of your environment. I want to help you fix it. You should hire me." And when actually let me come and meet all of his employees at his company and introduce me, and they had me do a security assessment of their company. And it's people like him that got it back in the day, right? Instead of calling me in and being like, these hackers who already had a record, who are already been a problem, these guys are hacking our company website and they're doing it to make a fool out of us. And instead it became this situation where it was like, you guys are having a capability and a talent that a lot of other people don't. You're not doing something malicious with it. You're pointing out to us that there's a weakness, even though the way you're going about it, we don't agree with. But come in and help us. And people like Win and doing things like that really shaped why things ended up kind of working out the way they did for me, right? I'm not sitting in jail because I had people like Brad Kaiser, who, when I was young, influenced me and showed me, all the amazing things technology could do. And you had people like Win, who, instead of calling the police on me, all but made me an employee for a short time to have me help the company and to look at various things that were there. I think, you and I were talking the other day, and we were talking about old funny stories of the past. I'll tell you one that I don't know that I've ever really told publicly. And that was in Riverton, Wyoming, when we first were doing all the stuff with Hack, right? Hackers Against Corporate Culture back at the university. We were trying to figure out how to get better bandwidth. And back in the day, it was impossible, right? You're in the middle of Wyoming, which back then everyone was just happy to have basic dial-up, if that, right? Like it's a rough time in 1996 when you talk about bandwidth and capability. So I was working with one of the school districts out on the reservation, St. Stephen's Indian School, and Robert Monroe and I, sorry, my wife would correct me. We were installing long-range internet all over the reservation to help these schools that obviously didn't have fiber or anything else running to them back then. So we had access to really good equipment, and we had a unit that had been sent to us for testing so that we could determine if we wanted to buy this larger engagement to be able to do all this stuff. And it was these Cisco AeroNet devices. Well, that Cisco AeroNet device, I ended up using that along with a 1 watt amp, which was as legally high as you could go, with FCC regulations. And I did a rooftop tower on top of the house that I was at, and we shot it at Wyoming.com's wireless deployment that they had for all these businesses in the area. We would wait until the peak hours of business were done, 5, 6 o'clock were done, and we would jump on there and we'd do these massive downloads and massive publishes and all this crazy stuff and exfiltrating all this data in these hacks and other types of things that we were doing. And it was just fun, right? We're doing an online streaming radio show that is being broadcast by one of the guys out of 303 out of Denver at the time, and just fun stuff. But one day I get a message in the mail, and it is from Wyoming.com. And of course, I'm not an actual legitimate customer. I'm hacking their wireless off their tower to get free bandwidth off ours. And I get this bill, and the bill shows every single month that we've ever been connected, shows our bandwidth utilization completely summarized, shows the cost of what that bandwidth utilization would be if we were a legitimate business. And then at the very bottom, it says amount due, $0.00. Steve Mossbrook. He's one of the founders. He was the guy who created Wyoming.com. And at the bottom, he wrote this little note, and he goes, Luke, we're well aware of what you've been doing. Please make sure that you keep your activities on off hours. Thanks, Steve, and signed off. And it's one of those moments where
you got to give him a little credit.
Yeah, you knew. I was hard busted. And instead they were like, you've helped us in the past. You've told us when you found vulnerabilities and weaknesses before. You're not interfering with our business. You're not doing illegal, wrong things necessarily with the bandwidth that you have here. And it's just one of those stories where it's like people, I try to always tell people, it's like, just because somebody has a past, or just because somebody is a little mischievous, or because they, the whole white black hat thing just doesn't make sense to me. It's more about, look at somebody's intent and their purpose. If you've got somebody that's curious and they've got passion and talent, they could end up being the absolute best employee you've ever hired for your business.
So speaking of that, so you've been a security leader, for a long time, and in charge with building teams. And when I think about, security people and practitioners in general, there's a little bit of anarchism in them, just in the DNA. But often those are the best individuals to hire. So you kind of have to look past some of that counterculture nature that they have and see what they can bring to the table. What do you look for when you're building teams and looking for people that might be great security practitioners?
I look for the ability for first off, passion. I'll start with that. If somebody, I don't care how smart somebody is at something, how many years of university they have, what degrees they have, what jobs they've worked at before. If they're burned out and they're not happy doing what they're doing, you're going to get, poor performance, poor product out of them. If you take someone who is passionate and they love what it is that they're doing, and you enable them to be able to succeed and grow and learn and constantly be challenged and constantly be able to feel like they're adding value and contributing, that person will be remarkable at whatever it is that you have them doing. So I would say the very first thing I look for when I'm hiring someone is passion. Number two, I think, would be their ability to communicate. And I know this is funny. Everybody goes, what do you look for in red teamers, like, and hiring operatives and people to go do, and pen testing? That's like, this is really truly it. Like, first is passion. Second is your ability to communicate, right? If you are going out and doing an incredibly technical job, and you have to then translate your actions, your methodologies, your findings into something that makes sense to an executive non-technical audience in a way so that they can truly understand the risk and the potential impact that exists within their business, you have to be concise and clean and clear about how you communicate. So I think that is probably the second thing that I look for. Number three is someone who wants to contribute to a healthy, positive culture within my businesses. And what I mean by that is, I don't care if you are an extrovert and introvert. I don't care if you are a lone wolf or if you like to work with a team. I don't care if you love remote work and you're never going to come into the office for a day, or if every single day you're going to be that guy that shows up at 6 a.m. with donuts, right? You be you. That is awesome. As long as you are bringing light and positivity and a good, healthy culture to that business. I don't ever want to hire people that are toxic, that erode or degrade from what it is that the team has worked so hard to build and create.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a fine line between being a cynic and being, counterculture. And sometimes I think, folks who are used to poking holes at things all day long, assessing security programs, auditing them, pen testing them, it tends, at least from my experience, it seems like security can attract cynical people, which can also be very negative and very poisonous. On the other hand, if you can find someone who's positive and can be upbeat and still poke those same holes, they're amazing. You want them around you anytime you can get them. So I think that's funny. Yeah. So where does being technical fall on your list? Because you say you named your top three. None of them are being technical.
No. And why? Because we can train you. Like, it's the same thing, right? Like, if I take you out of college, let's say that you went to school for journalism, right? And you've got an awesome degree in journalism, and I take you out to a work site and I drop you on site on a concrete pad and I go, here's a hammer, build the house. And I just stare at you. Nothing is going to get done. I don't care if maybe before you were a journalist, you used to go do construction. You're still not going to understand the concept of how that team is working or building a house. It's the same thing with technology. Yes, you need to have the core concepts and the understanding around the methodology of the work that you are doing, be it red team, blue team, whatever it is that you're doing. You need to understand those concepts. But I can train you and I can teach you, and so can our seniors and our principals and everybody else, on how to do all of the technical aspects of the job. And it's something that as you do the work, since you're doing it every single day for money, in and out, you get good at it quickly, especially if you have the aptitude, which is something that I think is also very important. You can have all the will in the world and all the want in the world to go be, a hacker and go be an ethical pen tester and these types of things. But if you are someone who is a bit of a Luddite and afraid of technology, or doesn't feel comfortable really digging into the computer, it might not be the right job for you, right? Maybe the better thing is doing research or analysis, right? I've watched people that came into the industry and they're like, I want to be a pen tester. I watched Mr. Robot. That was awesome. And as soon as they start doing the work, they realize, like I had one person say as she was breaking down into tears, and at a competition, she goes, I never realized how hard this was. And I go, oh, social engineering? And she goes, no, having to lie to people. She goes, I can make up a story all day long. I can read a script and tell somebody something, but when I actually get on the other end of the phone with someone who doesn't realize that I'm an attacker in that situation and I'm lying to them, it doesn't make me feel good. And I'm like, probably not the right job for you then, right? And it becomes this discussion where we figure out, what is the right thing? What is it about pen testing that intrigued you in the first place? Well, it's the ability to find new ways to do things that you're not supposed to be able to do. And it's like, classic answer, awesome. Let's look at all these other paths over here in research and stuff where you're not actually engaging with an individual and having to hack that person. Maybe there are all these other things in security research or defense even that are going to be much, much healthier or happier for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you talked about counterculture, and I've sat here and ranted a little bit about some of that. But I will say, in the early years of this culture, before birth of internet days even, it was a rougher, harder crowd. And it was a lot of of behavior that wasn't necessarily productive in a lot of situations. We still see a lot of that happening, obviously, but I think that the industry as a whole has started to mature and grow up, right? Those of us who were first going to DEF CON and Black Hat at its early years now have children who go to DEF CON and Black Hat each year, right? Like my son is 20 years old. And he went to DEF CON with us last year, and it was amazing. But it's interesting to watch as the generation shift. I think that a lot of what was the rock star ego is dying very quickly, and for good cause within our industry. I think that ego issue before has made a lot of people feel like the work and some of the teaming and some of the things you're trying to learn or do are somewhat unapproachable. And I think that people have watched amazing minds out there, the Ryan Clarks, Lost, Joe Grand, all the various people who run the DEF CON villages and do work. Those people really help inspire people to learn this stuff. And it's done through look how simple it is. Let's just teach you how to do it. It's awesome. It's easy. Don't be afraid of it. And it's such a better way. So I'm happy to see that's changed. When I talk about healthy culture in business, that's part of what I'm talking about, is that let's support one another versus trying to be elitists.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I can see that with my team, all the free stuff that we try to put out there. You see all the free hack the box stuff out there, YouTube videos. There's just unlimited resources to learn. And that's just folks like yourself and other people in the industry, tucking away their ego and just trying to bring people into the community, which is really cool to see the community professionalized to that level to want to bring people into it. So this is July 6th. I want to talk about a current event that I didn't plan on talking about, but I think it's interesting. And I don't think we have the details to talk about in detail, but you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So we just, over the Independence Day weekend, had Caseya, which is a mobile device management tool set. It had an event where a lot of folks were negatively impacted in the form of ransomware. And this is not to pick on Caseya. They're just another victim in this grand scheme of security incidents that we're seeing out there. And there's just not a lot of information about what happened yet. But what's your take on this? What's going on out there? Because we're seeing this supply chain thing where we're all reliant on multiple vendors and different tools and technologies. And in this case, it was a security tool, one primarily used for security, that ended up being how the breaches and ransomware was deployed. What's your take on this whole thing? Like, who are the actors? What can companies do? Like, where's your head at when you see stuff like this happen?
Yeah, this was it Thursday or Friday? Let me look here. It's actually what I pulled up here. So the 2nd was when this dropped. Online on Pound Security and one of our channels, we got a notification. I'll shout out here because it was helpful. SS_Mike was the one who I first saw the notification for, and the quote was at 12:27 p.m. If you're running Caseya VSA, shut down your VSA server now. There's an active 0-day being exploited. Hadn't hit news yet, hadn't hit anything else yet. I couldn't find anything searching for it. Nothing was public. So I kicked this over to our MDR manager at the time, Mike Jones, and Mike has just joined us. So this is like right out the gate. He's getting hit with more fun to deal with. And we were lucky. I'm going to put it that way. We're lucky because we weren't using Caseya. We didn't have a vulnerable instance. So in our specific world, we weren't targeted as part of this. We've dealt with other attacks, and we dealt with DarkSide. We dealt with a couple others that have hit some of our customers before. But with the Caseya thing, it was spooky, right? We by the time I had signed off, and again, I've been on PTO for the holiday, and I was still working on Friday to try to deal with this or to try to get some information about this. And by the time I went to bed that night, I believe that the count was like 16 MSPs, over 200 customers. And then we just kind of watched it spike over the next couple of days as people became aware that they were impacted. A lot of people obviously were shut down for the holiday. So it wasn't until Monday or even today in some cases that companies were figuring out that they've been compromised or part of this targeted attack. I think that what you're going to find with this stuff is that it's not going to slow down. We're going to see more and more attacks like this. And as I was showing a coworker the other day when we were kind of going through the dark web and looking at some of these websites that are run by these ransomware organizations, places where you can go buy data that has been, where people have refused to pay the ransom. You can go buy their data. You can go get a job. It was one of the things that blew my coworker away. Is we go to one of these ransomware sites and it's like they're hiring 13 active exploit developers, 2 people for sales, 1 person for public outreach. And they're like, even on the job listing for public outreach, it's like 3 to 5 years of mass media, production experience. And it's beautifully written job descriptions and organizations, but it gives you an idea of the level of complication. And, again, when you're looking at something like R-Evil and some of these other sites, this is not their native language. They're not writing this stuff in English or in, Italian or in whatever you're reading it in. It's they're writing this stuff and having it translated and doing all the work around that as well. So I think that what people don't get is that, they see these stupid images on the media of people in black hoodies, and it's always some dude sitting down in a basement somewhere at a keyboard, and their screens are all lit up, and that concept is not what we have here. These are organized crime-based businesses, often nation-state sponsored, incredible amounts of money, resources, bandwidth. When we dealt with one of the attacks earlier that I was speaking about, our customer, after refusing to contact or to speak out to the threat actors wanted to get their attention. So they hit us with a 600 gigabit a second DOS. That's a dramatic amount of power when you start talking about being able to throw that kind of bandwidth at somebody from all over the world, from thousands and thousands of different nodes that you're controlling through a C2, right? That's a whole other class of attack. It's not somebody just sitting there poking at you, trying to send you an email and trying to see if they can steal your Bitcoin information or your passwords off your computer. These organizations are literally crippling entire industries with some of their activities and the things that they're doing. And it is very much something that when you start talking to people that are looking at this at a world level, these are terroristic actions in many situations. And I think that as long as this stuff continues to ramp, we are going to see scarier and scarier events that are going to become public. There's a lot of stuff that's already gone on that we don't talk about. There's a lot of stuff that already has happened that we do talk about that's very interesting, right? Go look up Stuxnet, Flame, all that fun stuff from the past. This is not new. This cyber war has been going for a very, very, very long time. And it's not gonna die off anytime soon.
Yeah, it's crazy to me because, you're saying smaller and smaller companies have to think seriously about information security. It used to be when you started a business, you focused on, I need something to an accounting system. I need to do my taxes. Maybe I need to run payroll. It's like one of the new utilities that you have to have is an information security plan, because it can wipe your business out, because you have nation state actors, you have criminal organizations, not hackers in a hoodie in their basement trying to do stuff like this. And it's just incredible. And you can't help but feel a little bit of empathy for the organizations that are going through this, because, a lot of the organizations that were proactive enough to get mobile device management tool sets on their endpoint were actually thinking about security. And then they, had an event like this. Empathy is pretty crazy. What's your sense for? I know it's probably.
I was going to say, empathy that you talk about is literally what drove me in my last career change. Right, I went from working with one of the largest security providers in North America to moving to a business that, although they support thousands of customers, most of those customers are small to medium-sized businesses, and I find that a lot of those smaller to medium-sized businesses don't have the resources, the people, or possibly the maturity around security to be properly protecting themselves against today's kind of threat. So it really has been an inspiration, and is the reason that we've been building out an offensive practice over at Blue Bastion. We were already doing a lot of blue teaming. We were already helping with defense and disaster recovery and infrastructure and a lot of that. The new side of this is being able to go in and be people's offensive security partner, so that we can help them kind of be their sparring partner or their boxing partner, to use an old phrase there. But help them be prepared and be aware of the threat and what it looks like, so that they understand how they can properly respond if things do go sideways. When they go sideways, better way to put it in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely. Not to be all doom and gloom, I want to move on to something lighthearted, because this is funny to me and interesting. So you are currently living off the grid, which is one of the biggest ironies of someone who lives their life in technology and ethical hacking and security, but is off the grid. So Could you talk about that? What are you doing, and why, and how do you still work and maintain that lifestyle?
Yeah, my wife and I 4 years ago moved to the side of a mountain into a home that is essentially a bunker, for lack of a better way to put it. It's a beautiful home. I love my home, but it's a foot thick of stucco, or it's a foot thick of various building materials, including solid concrete on the back end of that, and stucco concrete, and corrugated steel, and all this crazy stuff. So the house is essentially like a big natural Faraday cage, which is nice for a lot of reasons. But it wouldn't matter anyway. My Wi-Fi can leak out all over my land. It's not like I have anybody anywhere near us because we are in the middle of nowhere. It's amazing. I cannot tell you how nice life is now that I am not in the center of a city. I grew up in Wyoming, in the middle of a very small town, about 7,000 people in Lander, Wyoming. Great community, amazing people. National Outdoor Leadership School is a big presence there. So I always kind of already had a bit of this mentality, right? The being able to take care of myself, not necessarily having to rely on government or city or somebody else to make sure that I could eat or drink or live, right? So my father and my family had kind of already beat that into me my whole life, and I'm very thankful for that. So when my wife and I were looking for what we wanted to be our home and our new place to just kind of get going with this life and this direction and everything we were doing, we found this place, and it was exactly like they had made it for us, right? We showed up and they already had an 80-foot Roan radio tower with a big, massive wind turbine on top of it, right? So there, instantly I'm saving 90 grand, right? It already had a solar array. So we just added 9 more panels to it, right? And fixed the tracker so that the 6 panels that were there would track with the sun. And when you come out from the city, the very first thing that you go is, oh my God, my water's coming up from this well that's 600 feet deep and just dumping in from the side of a mountain. I need to treat it, right? I need to use like iodine or bleach or something to treat no, it's the cleanest, healthiest water you've ever had in your life, right? So all of a sudden you start going into the city. We would go in to visit friends, or we'd stay a night in a hotel or something. And like the chloramine and all the things that are in the city water were so all of a sudden present to us, right? Like that we couldn't hardly stand to drink the water after going the other way with it. So it was neat. The learning experiences were cool. We have chickens, we have bees. We do our own power generation, our own gardening, lots of different things. And you ask about the how do I do my job? I have 3 different forms of redundant internet. We use Starlink as our primary, and we absolutely love Starlink service. I've seen download speeds there 400 megabit a second. Absolutely remarkable to think about being able to do that with a satellite dish. Uploads are strong that way too. We have a point-to-point ubiquity setup where we are doing long-range Wi-Fi with a company called Rise Broadband, and I'm able to fire a shot 6.5 miles to one of their towers and pull back a signal. And actually, funny enough, we're using that right now for this interview, where I would typically use Starlink. We're doing some pretty heavy downloads in the other room and other things. So I jumped on the other network. So this is actually my redundant network we're talking on. And then beyond that, we've got all the standard fun stuff with little 4G LTE jump packs and everything else. So you can be literally anywhere and have great connectivity anymore. Starlink makes it's a whole other game changer. But out where we're at, like, there are no power poles, right? There aren't public pipes. There aren't public sewer, right? All of this stuff is stuff you have to build, you have to supply, you have to support, you have to maintain. So we have been cataloging and kind of publishing our embarrassing, wonderful life on Facebook. You can go to offgridhackers.com and it'll forward you to our Facebook group. And we will have to add you to the group, but if you come and join the community and you want to contribute, we'd love to have you there. There's over 1,000 people, mainly from the information security community, who either live like us or have an interest in living this way. And it's been great to watch how my wife and I always joke, we started this website to be like a DEF CON village, right? To help people learn about this stuff. And we were doing things like hacking the IoT controllers for like solar controllers and saying, oh, well, this battery bank's only supposed to get blah, blah, blah power. We're going to let it have this much power instead. And then you start blowing up batteries, right? Starting fires and crazy stuff like that. And that led to us wanting to create this conference that led to this amazing community of people. And at this point, the fun part of it is my wife and I say every day we go out to try to figure out how to do something new on this, right? From logging to, tending chickens or the bees or whatever it is. And we'll do 2 or 3 weeks worth of research on the internet to try to figure out how to do it just right, how to do it perfect. And then we'll go do it and we'll film it and we'll put it on the internet. And then we deal with like 2 weeks worth of people telling us how we suck and could have done it a million times better and a million times smarter. And that's been one of the funnest parts of the community, is being like, well, here's our attempt, and everybody going, oh, you should have done this instead. And it's like the cool part about doing it is then everyone else who's watching the thread, everyone else who's watching the feed, all of a sudden goes, oh, okay, next time I do plumbing under my house with a pressure pump, I need to use a flexible elbow there instead of something that's fixed. Makes sense so that it can deal with the shaking and the motion of the motor turning on. Never thought about that. But it's some 30-year-old or some 30-year experienced plumber sitting on the group goes, you did that wrong. And we all learn from it. So that's really been a lot of what that community has been.
What an amazing time to be alive, because you can be someone who can have a farm and live off the grid, completely self-sufficient, but still be completely plugged in and be a technologist and a futurist all at the same time. And this might be the first time in history that you can feasibly do both things.
Yeah, it's neat. It's new. I wouldn't ever say that I'm self-sufficient, but I try to be as much as I can.
Well, awesome, man. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your story, and for all the excellent work you do and promoting the community and the security work that you do. So this has been an awesome conversation. Thanks, Pyro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate it too. And for all you that are out there that are looking to get into the industry or looking for work right now, reach out. I'm available on LinkedIn. We are hiring. Lots of companies are right now, and I'd be happy to pass you on to other people as well.
Excellent. And I'll be Luke McOmie on LinkedIn if you guys are looking for Pyro. If you guys like content like this, you can check out Tuesday Morning Grind on the Risk 360 playlist on YouTube. You can also check out Tuesday Morning Grind on any of the podcast apps that you like to listen to and find us. So thanks again, Pyro. Appreciate it.
Thank you.